Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this, which is the third in the series of cybersecurity webinars from Nostra. My name is Gary Byrne. I am the Managed Services Director here at Nostra. As always, we'd like to thank you all for joining us again today, both attendees from the last two webinars and then people who may be joining us for the very first time. For anyone who couldn't make the previous webinars, they are available on Nostra's YouTube channel. We'll put a link to that into the chat now, and we will share links in a follow-up email after today's session. In the last webinar, we looked at security awareness training. Training is absolutely critical in the battle against cyber attack because the weakest link in any security platform is normally the user themselves. After the last webinar, we offered a free trial of our security training platform. It is a 2-month free trial, so for anyone who'd like to avail of this, please reach out to me and I will get that set up for you. In every webinar, we will always be discussing policies and frameworks because they're the very backbone of any security posture. Today's webinar, we're going to focus on the security of Microsoft 365, which is a global platform and which you will all be using in one form or another. As always, these sessions are best when interactive, so please, as always, any questions that you have, there's a Q&A, there's a chat section, just post them in there and we'll handle them for you. And at the end of today's session, the security panel from Nostra are here and they'll deal specifically with Q&A. We will, as always, be recording the sessions and we will send on the recordings and the slides to attendees afterwards. So with that, I'd like to welcome you all again, and I'd like to hand over to our Head of Security and Compliance, Gary Melvin, and also to our Principal Solutions Architect, Senan Finucane, who are going to take us to today's webinar.
Perfect. Thanks, Gary. So today we're looking at security around Office 365, or now known as Microsoft 365. So we are looking at this because it's probably one of the biggest attack platforms that we see happening out in the wild. So everybody is using email. Most people are using Office 365. There is some Gmail customers out there, but for the most part, it's Office 365. So today we're going to look at the security around Office 365, what's in it, how do we manage it, and just give you a fairly high level, not too technical overview of what needs to be done to secure your data and your users in Office 365. You're going to hear from myself, Gary Melvin, who runs the security side inside of Nostra, and I have a team of security professionals, and also Senan Finucane, who is our CTO. We have a panel that includes Tom Bambrick, who is a senior advisor, along with one or two of our colleagues, including Jason Burns, who is head of compliance. So we have a good team here with you today. So if there's any questions, please feel free to drop them into the chat. As always, we're going to start off with how things have changed. So over the last couple of years, and things continue to change, and 2025 is a big year of change for all of us. So we're looking at moving from 10 years ago where we were very little remote working to an area in 2025 where we have a lot of global war. Now, hopefully that's coming to an end, but based on the news today, it could be starting back up again with Israel and Palestine. So there's a lot of global conflict, and anytime there's global conflict, there's a lot more cybercrime. And cyber war is a major element of global conflict. And that actually comes out to hit all of us. It's not just state to state, it comes out into the wilds. We've got AI, which we're going to talk about a little bit. AI is going to form a big part of security going forward. That's in both the defense and the offense. So we need to defend against it, and we need to use it to actually help us as well. So there's two elements to that. So we're going to use AI to be more productive. We're going to use AI on the security side to track stuff quicker. But then on the flip side of that is the cyber criminals are going to be using AI to do AI assisted and AI driven attacks. Two different, but that's what's going to happen, and that's what is happening. We're connecting more stuff to the internet. So no matter what we're doing, a lot of our services, they're all going cloud-based. I don't think any organization can actually function well now without being internet connected. So everything we do is internet connected. We have no perimeter. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we would have all sat beside behind a firewall in the office. We would have known everything outside the firewall was bad, everything inside is good. now we're in an area of zero trust. We don't trust the stuff outside, and we equally don't trust the stuff inside. We've people working from home, we've people working from everywhere, and that's what we want, but we need to keep it all secure. So the challenge is getting greater, data is moving around more, so our task is getting harder pretty much all the time. So what's 2025 bringing for us? So we've got DORA, which a lot of the financial institutions on the call have been working towards, or for some of the credit unions will be working towards. We've got the NIS2 directive, which is an enhancement of the NIS1 directive, which is yet to be passed into legislation. So it's in a directive that needs to be translated into law by the Irish government. That was put on hold because of the election. We expect that that's coming fairly quick. There was a cybersecurity bill passed in 2024 to enable everything for it, but that's yet to be a date on that. So that's coming pretty quick. And then we've got the parts of the Artificial Intelligence Act, which a main provision came into play on the 2nd of February 2025. So we need to be knowing more about what we're doing in terms of AI as well. So from a compliance perspective, a legal perspective, there's a lot more being asked for us, and there's a lot of changes coming in 2025. Cybersecurity and AI. So we've got the artificial intelligence section of it. So I just put this in around DeepSeek. A lot of people would have heard in the news how DeepSeek is the new AI platform coming out of China, can run on infrastructure that requires an awful lot less resources. We've seen it run on small little devices such as Raspberry Pis, which is a tiny little device size of a phone, and using a lot different type of older technology in terms of chipsets. The flip side of that is that there is some significant questions about the security and also about the data that's been tracked. So that's came in. We're seeing a lot of organizations have asked us to block it. It's something we'll continue to monitor, but there is good AI, there's bad AI. Same as when cloud came out, there was good cloud and bad cloud. It's not all equal, so it needs to be taken into consideration when you're looking at your AI requirements under the Act. One of the things when we think about Office 365 and Microsoft 365 is email. So email by default is not secure. So we have a little question here to get people thinking is we'd like to get people to pop into the chat. How old, without going looking it up on the internet, how old do they think email is? Just out of just to see how old they think it is. It'd be interesting to see how old people think actually email and how long it's around for. So if anybody has any, John has a good
I'll give you a
answer
hint.
there.
I'll give you a hint. It's almost as old as Gary Byrne.
I'm the only person in Austria who thinks it's young. please continue to throw your answers into the chat section there, please.
Yeah. So we have answers from 30 years up to 50 years, and that is pretty close. So there's two answers. One that would have seen it formed in MIT that would leave it at 60 years this year, and the other one then that would leave it in at 54 years, I believe. So there it is old. It's around a long time, yeah. So 54 years, depending on who you believe. There's a little bit of controversy on those that claimed that invented email, and what the email that we know is around since the 80s. And the reason we're saying this, and we'll get into it in a little bit more detail, is email has been around an awful long time, but email from the 80s hasn't changed very little. So the security protocols and the email protocols that were invented in the 80s are still the ones that are in use today. So email as a platform is not secure. And that's one of the things we're trying to get through today, is that the email that can easily be mimicked, impersonated, email by default really is not secure. So reports suggest between 75% and 92% of cyber attacks are email related. They either start off an email or they're email related. Email is an easy way in from a cyber attacker looking on the outside, looking into the organization. They just need to profile an organization. If they can look at the email records, It'll give them a lot of information about the organization. They can look on LinkedIn. All they need is the first name and the last name and one email address in the organization to figure out what somebody's email address is, because we all typically go first initial last name, first name dot last name. So if you know the format of an email address and somebody's name, you will get their email address. So email is the way in, and even with MFA enabled on Office 365 and Gmail, it's no longer secure. So one of the big takeaway from today is that if we think that we have multi-factor authentication on email and that we're good, then that is not the case. So email and multi-factor authentication can easily be hijacked. We're not going to go into the details of that today, but it can easily, there's a token or that sits in the browser that when you log on, and that allows you to log on again, and it doesn't ask you for the username and password. That token can be taken out of Office 365 and used on any other machine, and it will last for up to 90 days. So MFA and email, it needs for in 2025, that is no longer secure. So that's moving on from that. Some background on email. 60 years old, pioneered at MIT. The founder of email, Ray Tomlinson, is usually, that's where the 54 comes out of. So there's a little bit of debate between 65 and 71. Down in 1982 is where we look at the SMTP protocol, is what's the backbone of email and still used today. And then we bring all the changes all the way back up to 2025. It is still heavily used. It's not going anywhere. So then together we need to make sure it is as secure as possible. A lot of email platforms use legacy protocols that have been around since the 80s. So when we're looking at Office 365 and we get Office 365 out of the box, or Gmail or any of the other email platforms, and there's essentially just two anymore, they leave the old stuff on. A lot of the stuff that was born in the 80s and pre it are still turned on by default for backward compatibility. And that's the same with a lot of stuff. Gary Byrne, you might remember this screen.
I do indeed, yeah. I think I still use it.
So MS Mail came in 1998, which is the precursor to Outlook, and that has changed quite a bit. But essentially it is your inbox, your sent mail. It's built out a lot since then, but yeah, it hasn't. The look and feel of it has changed a little, but it's still essentially the same. But yeah, no, it has moved on quite a bit. So the challenge, and Office 365 is much more than email, but email is its backbone. Email is not secure by default, can easily be spoofed. Users love clicking on links in emails. We do phishing testing, and users love to open up an email and click on a few links. So we can do a lot of training, but what we do need to do is get our users to take an extra couple of seconds. The security solutions for email is not going to take out all the bad stuff. They'll take out a lot of the bad stuff, but if something is brand new out the door and it's not being detected by the security solutions, it has a good chance of getting in. And what we're seeing as well is legitimate platforms are being used to send loaded documents like PDFs, like Word documents. So cyber criminals will use a Word document shared on a compromised SharePoint site or on a Dropbox site with a PDF or an Adobe site and use that link then to send a loaded document that will take somebody's credentials. So trying to weed out the good from the bad is the challenge when cyber criminals use stuff that we trust by default to send out their payloads or their packages to get people to click on links. User credentials and system access is the goal. So when we look at cyber criminals, they're typically broken out into very organized groups. Some of them have a task or a job, and that's to get in the door. Once they get in the door, some cyber criminal crowds will actually sell on those user access then to somebody else who will perform an attack and carry out a ransomware attack. So cyber criminals have different job functions. Access is one, and user access and system access is what they want to get. So essentially, from a cyber criminal's point of view, they want to get access to a mailbox and then try and escalate that access up so they get access onto a single machine. If they can get access onto a single machine, they can move their way across the network. So that's where we kind of look at email can be the starting point for a much bigger attack. So secure in Office 365, email is part of the problem. It's not all the problem, but it is a good bit of the problem. So user credentials and system access is the target for cyber criminals. If the worst does happen, and bear with me, I am going to get on to securing Office 365 in a few minutes, but if the worst does happen, this is what happens. This is the chain of attack for a ransomware attack. Initial access is got, email, VPN, buy creds on the underground, so credentials can be purchased from underground markets. So, and then from there, they will get access onto a system. They will deploy some remote control. They will dump credentials off one device and use that to move across the network. And then once they have access on the network, they will disable the security software on the network. They will extract the data, and once they have the data extracted, they will deploy the ransomware. So all ransomware attacks are twofold at the moment. One is extraction of data. The second is deploy the ransomware. So if you can recover from backup, they will still have your data and hold it from ransom. That brings us on to some fundamentals that we're introducing in for, should say 2025 instead of 2015, so we'll edit that afterwards. These are our cybersecurity fundamentals recommendations. So we do recommend that everybody has cyber insurance, because if the worst does happen, they're a really good port to call. You do have to call them first, but they will have a team of responders, advisors, and legal ready to go. Number 2 is immutable backup. Without immutable backup, there's no guaranteed recovery position. So if we're sitting on Veeam backup and we don't have immutability, then the first thing cyber criminals will do is attack the Veeam backup server, delete the backups, and leave with no recovery position. And we see that happen first. We do get called in to assist sometimes when there is issues, and the first thing we'll ask for, do we have a backup? If the backup is not immutable, in the event of a ransomware attack, it will have been deleted. So that's number 2, is make sure there's a good recovery position. And the only way you can guarantee a recovery position is have an immutable backup. Email and Office 365 security, we're covering that today. Endpoint protection. And this is something that we will cover later on today, and you'll see this later on today, is not all endpoint protection is equal. So we're looking at Defender for Endpoint in particular today, and it has a very comprehensive coverage on the endpoints. Security awareness training, Gary mentioned it at the beginning. We want to make sure that all staff are continuously being made aware of the threats and are up to date. Secure remote access, so making sure that remote access coming into the organization has MFA against it as well. And then number 7 is a big one, keeping everything up to date. So that is a challenge. That means no legacy systems. After October, it will mean no Windows 10. At this moment, it would mean no Windows Server 2012, no Windows Server older than 16. And 16 has a timeline on it as well. So one of the most important things on cyber is keeping everything up to date. Because in order to easily get down onto systems, there need to be vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities can be patched, but on legacy systems, they can't, because they've gone out of their support period. So moving on to the Microsoft Office Suite. So the Microsoft Office Suite, which we all use and use it quite a bit, is encompassing quite a bit. So we've got our Office applications from Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook. We've got our communication platform, which now a lot of people use for both calls, messaging, meetings like this. So Teams, huge part of what we do on a daily basis. We've got our personal storage, OneDrive, so we have a terabyte there that we can share stuff. We've got our team storage in SharePoint. That's where we collaborate on different teams, share documents and update them. We've got our email still at the back. We've got some database stuff in terms of access. One of the things we'll get into, Intune. So Intune is an agent that goes on, a management agent for the Microsoft 365 suite that goes down on every machine. We've got some Azure information protection. We've got our Defender family with Microsoft Defender for Endpoint and Defender for 365. And then we've got our Active Directory, or our users either synced or created in the Microsoft Cloud. So as a platform, it is pretty comprehensive. And a lot of organizations are moving a lot of their data and applications. And then to one side of this, we might have another line of business applications that are integrated. And we're using this Microsoft Entra ID piece to do our single sign-ons into our other applications. So for a lot of organizations, everything is driven out of here, and they might have some Microsoft Azure servers sitting over the right-hand side as well. So a lot of us are heavily dependent on Microsoft, and then it's making sure we have all the security piece turned on. So productivity and collaboration is around Teams, 365 apps, OneDrive and SharePoint. Teams is probably something that's grown quite a lot in a lot of organizations to do with remote working or putting more documents. So we've seen a big migration, and some of you guys in terms of customers said to us as well, digital transfer, COVID was the biggest driver for digital transformation across most organizations in the last couple of years. So we've seen a big move away from file shares, and file shares are pretty dumb setups that don't have the ability to version control, work on multiple same people working on one document, multiple people working on a document at the same time. A lot of advantages. So we're seeing a huge move towards SharePoint. We're seeing a huge move towards Teams. There is some thought to be planning to be given to it, so it doesn't sprawl out of control. But we're seeing an awful lot more move and move to cloud only as well, with a drive to have less servers.
Sorry, Gary.
Yes.
I just have a question in there from Aaron McDonald. Do you have any recommendations on cyber insurance providers? Sadly, lots of providers don't allow cybercrime cover for financial institutions. Aaron, thanks a million for that question.
So we would have a few, Aaron, for sure, and we do fill out the forms quite a lot. So we will send on a couple after this. So we'll dig them out and send them on to you. But I know for our financial companies we work with, there is a couple that cover those. So we'll get a list of those off to you. No problem at all. Azure Virtual Desktop is moving our desktop into the cloud as well. So that we've seen a big jump on that in the last while as well for enabling remote working and keeping data secure. So rather than having data outside the organization, everything is sitting inside in Azure. Security and data protection, one of the biggest pieces on the Microsoft suite is there is a lot of security functionality in Office 365, and Senan is going to cover this later on in terms of the licensing of it, but there is a lot of functionality to be turned on that doesn't get turned on by default. So we have secure access, we have advanced threat protection, and device management, and we're going to cover a lot of that in a few minutes as well. Intune, this is the biggest thing that we want to have all our customers on, is Microsoft Intune. So Intune gives us a view of the device. Intune and Defender for Endpoint gives us a huge amount on the device. If we have Intune on a device from a security point of view, we can see when that user logs on to Office 365. It's not only the user details, but it gives us all the device details. If there's an issue in cyber, we limit, and actually it's been done by default going forward as well. A lot of organizations we work with only allow access to Office 365 with their devices that are joined to their network and Intuned enrolled. By default, any device with the right username and password can connect to your Office 365 tenant. Going forward toward getting towards an area of zero trust, what we want is the Intune agent on every device, and then only allow those devices connect. We're not there for everybody yet, but it's definitely somewhere we want to get to. So Intune, Defender for Endpoint, pretty much on all the devices, and then there's some automatic device setups for end users that can be done as well. So one of the biggest things that we like on the Office 365 piece is Defender for Endpoint. So Defender for Endpoint is a next generation antivirus, anti-malware, and is very effective in terms of stopping ransomware and stopping cyber threats. So we're going to go through some of the configurations on that in a few minutes. So when we look at Defender for Endpoint, along with Intune, we have the ability for asset discovery, threat and vulnerability management. So we get a huge view of the device. And when you look at Secure Score in a few minutes, once we have Defender for Endpoint down and Intune, it really unlocks insights down onto the devices. And a lot of organizations, depending on the licensing you have, you're going to miss the device piece out of the Secure Score. And if you're missing the device piece out of the Secure Score, then you're missing quite a bit. And that's something that we want to kind of push forward. So once you enable Defender for Endpoint and Intune, you get that device piece in the Secure Score. Attack surface reduction, next generation protection, endpoint detection and response. There's a lot in Defender for Endpoint, and we're going to look at some of the policies in a few minutes. So the Defender family includes Defender for Endpoint, which we think of it as protecting the endpoint device. So we have Defender for Server that sits on your servers. We have Defender for Endpoint that sits on all your Windows 11, 10 devices. And then we've got Defender for Office 365 that secures the documents inside an Office 365. This includes email and SharePoint. So we've got safe attachments, safe links, and safe documents. Protection for SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams. So there's quite a bit of protection, and this is all inside the Office 365 family. Taking that one step further, we then have the ability to actually label Microsoft documents. So if you have Word documents that are particularly sensitive, we can turn on Azure Information Protection and start protecting documents by labeling them. So putting that label in a document as internal only, confidential, and then you can have rules based on those documents. If you have a highly sensitive document, you can have it that it's only available online. So if somebody takes the document, puts it on a USB key, walks out of the office, and they go to connect to that document and don't have a valid username and password with access to that document in your 365 tenant, then the document won't open. And that's where we want to get to for very critical documents. And then having rules about those documents not being allowed out of the organization. Secure Score. So we want to simplify the Office 365 security, and we want to bring it back to the Secure Score. So every 365 tenant has a security score, and it's something we feel that should be monitored monthly or at least quarterly. It does go up and down as Microsoft make recommendations. As we can see here, this one has three of the items have regressed. There's 110 actions to be done. Every secure score will go up if there's work done on it. If there's left, it drops back down. It's easy to monitor. We think it's a very good KPI for all organizations using Office 365 to have in there. And Microsoft is always improving. That's one of the benefits of being on the 365 platform. Stuff is improving. It has its security issues, so does every platform, but it is always improving. This is the security score. This is where we want to get you. It's above 77%. So if we take a couple of minutes to look at this one, we can see the identity piece, and that's all around protecting users. And we're going to go into each of these sections. So we're going to spend a few minutes on identity, a couple of minutes on data, a couple of minutes on the device, and a couple of minutes on apps. So the identity is all about protecting the user's sign-in risk and user risk. We want to get that as high as possible. The data is around data loss protection and sensitivity labels. So that's how we protect our data once it's in Office 365. The device is around Defender for Endpoint and Intune, and that captures the security posture of those devices, including servers. And then there are applications, and our applications are quite broad. So we're looking at applications that are sitting on our endpoints and seeing are they up to date, are they secure, and then permissions around applications as well. So looking at the identity side, these are the key things that we need for the identity. And I'm going to step through each one just so we all know. And those four is trying to, so in order to get our identity up where we want it, we need to have multi-factor authentication. We need to turn off the old stuff, which is called the legacy authentication. We want to have password policies, and we can debate these. Non-expiring passwords is not something everybody is ready to go through, but having strong passwords is. The user risk and user sign-in policies, that means if something happens and a user has been detected at high risk, the system will automatically ask it for MFA again or lock it out. So while we're all sleeping, it has the ability to lock down that user if something's bad going on. Some elements around privileged access, self-service password reset, and some elements around consent. So there's quite a bit in there in identity to get the score up, but all generally good stuff. This inside an Office 365, we can come in, you can filter on where are we at. So here I've filtered on the category identity, and this is all the recommendations. So there's 12 recommended security controls for managing identity. They're all listed here. You can see in this tenant, it has half of them done. the other half need to be done. So it's a very good element to work through. So in terms of identity, there's 12, fairly straightforward to do. It does need to be licensed. So if you're on a business standard license, you're not going to get it. So in order to get the elements, we need a business premium license, and we also need an additional license for some of this advanced functionality here in terms of protect and sign on. So some of the stuff in Microsoft is protected by licensing, but fairly straightforward to do, as long as we have the agreement in order to do it. So there is a little bit in it. Data, so data classification, identifying sensitive data. That's the hardest part. Where is my sensitive data sitting? Have I it classified? What are my data loss prevention policies? Do I know what type of data? Office 365 will allow us to apply rules. And there's also some rules we can do easily that if there's a bank account being sent out, it'll tell the user, we've recognized this possibly could be a bank account, a credit union account, or a SIN number or social security number. Settings for encryption, access control, information rights management, and audit logs. By default, on some of the licensing in Office 365, it keeps sign-in logs for 7 days. So depending on what your license are on, you may only have 7-day audit logs. So if something bad happens, you're not going to have visibility going back. So, Stephen, I'm going to get to your question now in 1 second. So it's actually a good question. So this is the security controls around data for them. A little bit less, but actually hard to do. The identity ones were a little bit easier. These require a lot of planning, a lot of pre-work, and organizing your data and making sure then that documents are labeled correctly. Depending on the licensing, documents can be labeled per document or per SharePoint site. And that's something that needs to go through a design consultation process, because that can go horribly wrong if not done well. So getting on to Stephen's question. So how does Windows Defender and Microsoft Security Tools protect mobile endpoints like Android phones accessing 365 data? So I'm going to cover the secure score for devices, and then I'll break out into that. But essentially on devices, and one of the biggest things on devices, we look at device configuration, ensuring the device is configured correctly. Look at patch management, endpoint protection, mobile device management, so using the MDM, including policies and remote wiping capabilities. So in order to get to Stephen's question, there's 2 options for mobile device management. So what we have is we've got MDM, which is taking full management of the device, but we've got a thing called mobile application management, which is MAM that I don't have in here, but that only secures the applications. So if the company owns the device, they usually put an Intune agent down onto the device and put mobile device management, which is a lot more security controls. If they don't own the device, they'll use mobile application management and protect the applications in the Microsoft suite, like Outlook, Teams, anywhere your data sits. Both are good. Some organizations will run both, some for corporate devices and have policies for non-corporate devices. So it has the ability to do quite a lot. So it's deciding then as an organization what we want to do for it. But it is fairly straightforward to do. Includes access controls and then some compliance and compliance policies. But if we look at the configuration for devices, and this is where I kind of started at the start and saying not all endpoint protection solutions are equal. If we look at Defender for Endpoint, we have 101 security controls on Defender for Endpoint. So it's not just about putting an antivirus down on the machine. It is making sure that machine is security hardened. Turns off quite a lot of stuff. So if we look down at this list, it has disable remote access, disable a whole load of legacy items on that machine, disable autoplay for drives. There's a lot of turning stuff off. In Microsoft land, you have to turn a lot of stuff on. If people have gone through pen testing and they're looking at a pen testing sheet, unless you've done security hardening on servers and desktops, you are going to get a report back to say there is security vulnerabilities on the machines. These are not done by default. So if we look down at this list, and there's 101 of these on Defender for Endpoint, where security configurations need to be turned on, all of these needs to be tested. And typically when Nostra are doing it, we'll take a user or two from each department, we'll roll out the security configurations, we'll test it, we'll break stuff, we'll adjust it, and then go again. But there's definitely, you cannot do this level of security hardening without having an impact. So it's making sure that it goes through a fairly rigorous testing process. So there's 101 recommendations for security controls, and that's stuff that we push down. So I'm just going to, these are, I haven't added them all, but you'll see some stuff like disabling Flash Adobe Reader, which is considered no longer secure, setting password ages, setting IPv version 6, which is a newer version of the internet protocol that PCs use to talk on the network. There's quite a lot in it, so it's not just a replacement for your antivirus. So when you're looking at security solutions going forward and you're talking about Defender for Endpoint, it is much more than a replacement for a web root or a Sophos or something else of similar solution. So it's a lot more. So we've got 101 of these controls that get pushed out down onto the endpoints, that leaves it in a very secure position. Disable SMB server number 86. That's a lot of this stuff turns off the ability to communicate with older technologies. If we're using older technologies in the business, we may have to get rid of those first in order to bring the security posture up. So at the first couple of slides, when we were saying we want to keep everything current, and unless we keep everything current, we can't turn on some of this stuff as well, because we will break stuff. But there is an element where we can turn on 80% of it, work to get everything current, and then turn on the other 20%. So that's Defender for Endpoint. And one of the things we wanted to show was how vast the security controls is that is in there. On the application side, then we've got and this is the fourth piece of the secure score. So on applications, we've got application updates, ensuring that the applications that are running on your devices are always up to date. Unless we have Defender for Endpoint and rolled out onto the machines, we're not going to get the insight into a lot of this stuff. We've got some configuration settings, threat protection around applications, and compliance and data protection elements around applications as well. We've 58 recommendations around applications. The applications include elements like secure and email, SharePoint, all the applications inside in Office 365. So that's why it's 58. So again, there's quite a bit here to be done, but more straightforward than doing the device piece and doesn't cause as much issues. So they're the 58 across everything, across email, documents, go quite a bit, and then approval of applications as well. So just bringing it all together before I pass you over to Senan, what we have is secure score. It's based around the identities, the applications, the endpoints, and the data. We want to get to a stage where we're not trusting anything on the outside, anything on the inside. So zero trust, and enforce our policies on all of those devices, and get to a stage then when we're only allowing access to the 365 tenant that from a device that is known to you as the Intune agent and is marked as being compliant with all these policies we've turned on, that it is in a good security state. And that's the destination. And in order to get to that is continuous improvement, making sure the secure score is being kept up to date, and then continuous improvement all around that as well. My last question before we move it into Zenon: how many controls are in Office 365 for managing security of the endpoint? Can anyone remember, or have I lost you?
Again, anybody throw answers into the chat there?
You're excluded, Gary.
Thanks, Gar. Just while people are answering the question, Gary, we do have a question in from Conor McGarry. If you follow all those steps of the last 6 to 7 minutes, how high would you expect the Microsoft security score percentage to get to approximately? Yeah, Conor, thanks a million for that question.
Probably up around 85%, Conor. So you're probably easily, if we do all of that, you're up on 85, 90%. If we do all of them, we're getting closer to that. 104%. Yeah. So I'd say about 85%, Connor. So in terms of how many security controls are for the device, there's 101. So more than 100, John, is correct. So we have 101 in there for that. So thanks for those answers, and thanks for the questions, Connor, as well. So I'm going to move you over now onto Sinan.
Cool. If you can just give me control there, Gar, just to move along.
Perfect.
Okay, Connor's question segues nicely into business premium, because in order to get a very high percentage score in business premium, you need to be able to actually, sorry, Gareth, you can reshare there and you're going to have to just slide it through. To get a high percentage score in business premium, or to get a high percentage score in security, you have to have business premium. And I'm going to take you through now the reasons why. If you don't mind sharing that again.
No problem. Be your assistant today, Sinan.
If you don't mind, if you just move to the next slide. Thanks very much. So why business premium? So when it comes to business premium, it's a comprehensive solution that integrates productivity, collaboration, and then all the advanced security that comes with business premium. So with basic and standard, you don't really get enhanced or what we'd call enterprise security features. You only get it with business premium. And that's what unlocks the higher echelons of that security score. In order to get that 75, 85%, you really have to have business premium. It's just not possible with basic or standard. So what do you get for upgrading to it? As you can see there, you get Word, Excel, PowerPoint, all that good stuff that you get with basic and standard. But on top of that, then you get secure access working from anywhere. So you could be working from home or from a WeWork style location, anything like that. But the be all and end all is that you're being protected while you're working from those locations. Then for your IT department, we have the ability then to over-the-air device manage your device with Intune. And again, Intune only comes with business premium. It doesn't come with basic or standard. If you need Intune and you run basic or standard, you'd have to stack it on top of your existing license, which doesn't really make sense from a finance point of view. You might as well just upgrade to business premium. Then on top of that, business premium is the only business SKU that comes with conditional access, and that's Entra ID P1. That basically gives you advanced identity controls, which again, you don't get with basic or standard. Microsoft also recommends that you deploy conditional access MFA via conditional access, not via security defaults or per user, which is the only options available to you if you have basic or standard. You also get, and the biggest thing, or probably the biggest addition to business premium in the last 12, 24 months has been Defender for Business. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with Defender for Business, it's really two tools rolled up into one package. So it's Defender for Endpoint, which in old money is an antivirus. And then it's also Defender for Office 365 Plan 1, which basically is your collaboration protection, or again, in old money is your anti-spam. So that gives you like impersonation protection, safe links, safe attachments, all that good stuff to protect you against malicious attackers. And then on top of that, as we all move to SharePoint, you get Azure Information Protection and you get data loss prevention tools, especially around sensitivity labels and data classification. So those two are key. As we move and perform digital transformation for our clients, those two tools are key in order to secure data within SharePoint or OneDrive file repositories. And as we all move to an AI world where everybody's adopting Copilot or several other tools, you really need to have your data classified and secured with sensitivity labels inside of those file repositories so that your employees can share those with outside users, either maliciously or accidentally as well. You're putting in guardrails, I guess, for your data. Now, it's important to note that if you're still on an old X drive or a Y drive or the company P drive, you can't really avail of these advanced tools. And as I suppose Shadow, I was only listening to a podcast coming in this morning, and the two big trends for 2025 when it comes to cybersecurity that you need to protect against are shadow AI. And that firstly means basically your employees uploading your company data into whatever AI tool of choice that they think is on vogue at that particular point in time, without any, I suppose, governance or awareness of your IT department. Now, that can be very dangerous because it can open you up to, I suppose, a breach suit, or it could end up with some sort of, I suppose, reputational damage as well, or you could breach GDPR. So it's really important that you create sensitivity labels and you have, I suppose, some sort of data classification around your data so that the users are blocked from doing that. And again, they may only be doing it to try and improve their job workload, or they may be trying to be more efficient. But again, you need to put some form of guardrails in there to protect them against that. And then finally, business premium, it massively improves cost efficiency as well, because you don't have to have a stack of cybersecurity tools all disconnected, disaggregated, not working in tandem or in concert. Whereas if you subscribe to Microsoft's tools, they're all native to each other. There's no APIs in between them. They all work off the one dataverse as well, which is massively important, and it's massively efficient as well. And from a management point of view and a security point of view, I'm sure Gary will attest to it as well. The power of the Microsoft Security Center is immense to companies like Nostra and MSPs in general. We have one single pane of glass where we can see exactly what's going on within your Microsoft 365 ecosystem or deployment as well. So hugely, hugely beneficial. If you don't mind going to the next slide, Gar. So this is a matrix myself and my colleague Darren Mooney put together basically to show you the differences of the 3 different SKUs within the Microsoft Business family of licensing. So at the top, you have Business Basic, you have Business Standard, and you have Business Premium. And then we've broken it out into the 3 core pillars of any good, I suppose, cloud-based productivity suite. So you have your productivity and collaboration at the top, you have security in the middle, and then you have compliance at the bottom. So with Basic, you really only get Office web apps, which means you can only use Microsoft Office via the web. You cannot use it deployed as a desktop application. You get your usual Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive, and Outlook. So for very light touch startups, that might be an option, Business Basic, but again, you do not get your security. So I'd always recommend Business Premium, no matter how big your organization are. But again, Microsoft have given us options because again, every business needs options to function from the very get-go. Security then, one of the biggest things you get with Business Premium is single sign-on, or the ability to enterprise auth to other SaaS-based applications. So what that means basically is that you don't have multiple usernames and passwords. You can use your Entra ID as your identity and access management platform, but it can federate to the likes of Salesforce or whatever tool that you may adopt for your business. And any tier 1 cloud provider or SaaS provider worth its salt can integrate with enterprise apps and SSO from Entra ID from Microsoft. So if you're considering a tool to adopt within your business, that should be the first question that you ask yourselves. Can it federate to single sign-on with Entra ID with 365? If it can't, I would look elsewhere. It's not worth it because it introduces other security risks. Then, so I suppose, guess why Business Premium? So it's a comprehensive solution that integrates productivity, collaboration, and security all in one simple to consume license fee per user per month. And I'll just quickly go through the 5 key business challenges I believe that it solves for you guys. So secure access from anywhere, again, over the air management. You have the advanced security and conditional access, cost efficiency, and data integrity. And then Gar, if you don't mind going to the matrix again and the one beyond.
We do have some questions coming in there, but we will deal with them in the end. We've got a Q&A section.
Yeah,
so thanks everybody for the questions. Keep them coming.
Yeah. Sorry, the next one. And if you, yeah, just there. So the one thing the Business Premium really excels with is it saves you money. It's very cost effective. So it's roughly, I don't know, €20 per user per month for Business Premium or thereabouts. But the fact that you don't have to stack multiple other software security offerings on top of that means that it's the right choice for your business. A lot of people call it the hero SKU within the Microsoft family of, I suppose, productivity and security offerings. And it definitely is, because at €20 per user per month, for the less than the price of a coffee, I guess, per week over the course of a month, your employees are, I suppose, empowered and secured to use best-in-class productivity and security and collaboration tools. It's just a phenomenal value without a shadow of a doubt. So if you move to the next slide, Gary, I can show you how. So this, on the left, you have basically business premium. And as you can see there, I think, yeah, $18.90 is the exact price. But on the right, you'll see an alternative security stack from a typical business in 2024, 2025. So we'll step through the features at the top. So you've Defender for Office 365, which again is kind of your collaboration protection. So it's basically anti-spam and all money. So if you were to adopt in lieu of that, Mimecast, Spam Titan, Barracuda, whatever, it's about €5 per user per month. Then next you've Defender for Endpoint, which is your antivirus or your anti-malware device on your endpoint. Again, in lieu of that, if you were to go for WebRoot, ESET, Capture Client, Symantec, McAfee, any number, there's a million of them out there at the moment. That's about €6 per user per month. Then the key feature is Microsoft Intune. And another, I suppose, key point I should mention as well is, as we're going through digital transformations and we're moving away from traditional Active Directory, so everyone's heard of Active Directory and domain controllers, they will be a thing of the past. Again, echoing back to Gary asking his questions about email, and it was like nearly as old as Gary, which is quite a while. So everyone needs to move away really from traditional Active Directory if they can, if they're not tied some sort of legacy application. You really should look at moving to Entra ID, where you're going to gain advanced and enhanced security with the likes of Business Premium. And then you can SSO and federate out to any number of those SaaS applications that I talked about previously. So Intune is crucial to all of this. And again, Intune only comes with Business Premium. The equivalent of Intune in the outside Microsoft world would be like VMware Workspace ONE, Citrix Endpoint, or Sophos Mobile. So they're an MDM or an MAM that Gary was talking to there a few slides back. Then you have Azure Information Protection, key for securing your files once they're in SharePoint and OneDrive. Again, you only get that with Business Premium. You'd have to probably subscribe to something like SiteImprove, Alteryx, or ArcServe to get similar functionality and protection. Universal Print is getting quite popular now, because when Universal Print came out about 12 months ago, a lot of the printers that supported Universal Print were brand new and expensive, and companies didn't want to shell out for a brand new printer. They may have had an MFP that was only maybe 12 or 24 months old. But now the vast majority of them are Universal Print capable, and that basically means that you no longer need to run a virtual machine acting as a print server. You gain the benefits of running a cloud-based print server that is covered under the Business Premium license. And that just means that you can secure print from anywhere. So basically, if I have a top classified document that I don't have access rights to print from, I may be able to view them on my screen, but I don't have the rights to print them. Well, then Universal Print will check my printer rights and see if I can or cannot print that document. If I attempt to print that document while I'm anywhere, it will not print the document. So it's another way to protect against data loss prevention as well, and I suppose preserve the integrity of company data. Next, we get to Azure Virtual Desktop. So I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Azure Virtual Desktop. It's your virtual desktop in the cloud. Now, it's important to note the CAL, or the client access license, for that is included with Business Premium. You still have to pay for the platform as a service architecture that you consume underneath that through your Azure subscription. But the equivalent of that outside Microsoft would be like VMware Horizon or Citrix. I'm sure you've heard of Citrix before. Then finally, we have the Office Apps, Exchange Online, all those collaboration tools. That is basically, you get 1 terabyte of cloud file storage per user per month with the Business Premium SKU, and the equivalent with Google Workspace Business Plus is similar. So they're quite like for storage capacities, but the security features is what I believe Google Workspace is missing. They're nowhere near as integrated or as advanced as Microsoft as well. And then the key metric on the bottom is you pretty much get all Business Premium for $18.90, whereas with Google Workspace and that stack security approach, you get it costs you pretty much €57. But the key thing again to mention is you probably end up with 6 or 7 different single panes of glass that you have to manage. Whereas when it's Microsoft, it's all one pane of glass. basically the security center, the compliance center that we can manage on your behalf as well. So if there was one takeaway that I'd like you to, I suppose, understand from this whole presentation today, is to not treat your Microsoft licensing as a license transaction. It's a whole lot more. You need a competent company like Nostra that has the skill and the expertise to manage the configuration in the background. We were talking about security scores earlier on. Out of the box, a security score, even with Business Premium, will probably attract a secure score of about 25 to 30%, which is nowhere near good enough to where you need to be. In order to get there, you need a company like Nostra managing your 365 configurations and security policies and procedures in the background to get up to 75% plus. So again, do not treat it like a license transaction. I guess that's all for me. Thanks for listening. Over to you, Gary.
Senan, absolutely. Listen, Senan, thanks so much for that. And also Gary Melvin as well. We did have a couple of questions. So listen, a couple of points there. There has been a very, very recent pricing change to Business Premium. It's now $20.60 per month as opposed to what it was $18.90, but it's still considerably less than the €57 that Senan had outlined there. So remarkable value for money. Guys, a couple of questions. I think there was one answered already. It came in from Peter Ahern. If you use Microsoft Defender, can you remove other security apps such as Norton? And Gary mentioned, and Senan went through in his deck. Yes, by putting in Business Premium and Microsoft Defender, it replaces all of the other products and all of the other costs of products that you have that are ongoing at the moment.
Sorry, just to add to that, Gary, as well. Defender for Endpoint, I'm sure you've all have heard of Gartner and Forrester. They're kind of, I suppose, software analyzers and appraisers, and they have what they call the Magic Quadrant. Gartner have anyway. In the top right corner, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint has consistently came for the last 3 years in the leaders quadrant. So if you're hesitant about taking out the likes of Norton and swapping in Defender for Endpoint, you don't need to be. Defender for Endpoint is a best of breed technology, far supersedes most of the competition out there. And just to kind of give a bit of pedigree to Microsoft, they've spent over 20 billion on R&D when it comes to cybersecurity and security tools in general over the last 5 years. Most of the other software competitors can't come anywhere near that with that level of spending. So,
Senan, thanks for that. A question in from Pedro. What are the pros and cons of enabling self-service password? It might be a good option for their organization.
Yeah, I can take that. So when you enable self-service password reset, you're giving your end users the ability to reset the password themselves. They don't have to log a ticket with their MSP or internal IT. They can go ahead and do that themselves, usually in conjunction with their Authenticator app. It's much like how we all reset passwords with all the other several tools we use with our banking or with our utility companies or whatever. It's the exact same thing. But basically, it enables your users to get back working quicker rather than having to log a ticket with their MSP. So that's the biggest, I suppose, enhancement and improvement.
And any cons attached to that, Sen, as to like what are the rules of engagement, I suppose, around that?
As long as it's deployed correctly and managed correctly, again, by someone like Nostra with experience with these type of tools, I don't believe there's any cons. If it's done by yourselves and there's no vigilance or governance performed over it, well, then there may be cons. Like Gary alluded to earlier on, you can have kind of MFA takeover or MFA compromise, and that could lead to, I suppose, a nefarious attacker resetting a password that you should never have had access to do so. But as long as there's proper governance and oversight from a competent Microsoft expert company, I don't believe there is. So,
Senan, thank you again. Okay, and Gary Melvin as well. Listen, really appreciate it. So folks, thank you. We finished exactly on time. Again, thanks to everybody who attended today, and the slides will be following on in email, and our contact details are there. So thank you all. Enjoy your day.